So here we go, another round of bottle basics, and this one's fun because this is also announcing a new release, and that is the Lagrimas del Valle Rancho El Sabino, and this is the 2023 release. So let's break down this bottle, and as you can see, a decent amount has already been consumed out of here because this is some fantastic tequila. So, as we go around the bottle itself, on the very top here, over the seal, or this capsule and necker, or bar strip, whatever you want to call it, it states agave harvested in 2023. So that's the date that the agaves were actually taken out of the ground and harvested for this field. And on the very top, you'll actually also be able to see here in tiny writing, it states El Sabino. That is the name of the particular field where this came from. Now, this is important because Lagrimas del Valle Tequila, this concept, is actually a rancho único concept, meaning it is a single ranch of agave. This is all about terroir and how much different the agave can taste from one another. Now, the first two ranches that were harvested, the first one was the 2022 Palo Verde, and the second was the 2022 El Chiqueño. They sit nearly side by side in the same area. However, these two fields produced such distinctly different tequilas. The Palo Verde was quite a bit sweeter, had a more kind of like star anise element or flavor to it. And then the El Chiqueño was a bit more austere, a little bit brighter, a little bit sharper, a little bit more acidity, and a little bit more grassiness. Now, this particular field, the El Sabino, is from a completely different area entirely. This comes from a region or an area called Tuchitlan in Jalisco. And you'll notice that here on the label, we actually state rancho location, Tuchitlan, Jalisco. Now, Tuchitlan is about an hour and a half, thereabouts, away from the distillery where Lagrimas is made, which is NOM 1123. Now, if you remember from the El Velo video, if you look on every label of tequila, you should see a NOM stamp and then a number, and the number correlates to the legal entity that's producing that tequila. In this instance, NOM 1123 is Cascoin, and Cascoin is located in El Arenal in Jalisco. They make a number of phenomenal tequilas, and frankly are one of my absolute favorite distilleries in the world of tequila. So if you see anything from NOM 1123, and specifically anything with the name Cascoin on it, just know it's a great sign of quality. So with this particular field, this is about an hour and 30 minutes away from El Arenal, where the distillery is further south. Now, this particular area is also known to be the home place of this thing, which is the icon. These are the guachimontones, and the guachimontones are circular pyramids that actually date back, and I'm going to totally mess this up, but Google is my friend here, so they date back quite a bit. We'll just say maybe I believe it's like the 7th or the 8th century, but feel free to Google that and correct me in the comments down below. But the Guachimontones are actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and they're basically a place of worship for the indigenous Mesoamerican peoples that once lived there. And while many pyramids are used as burial sites, these were actually used as celebratory sites. And so dancers would basically congregate around the outer edges and on the different rims of the pyramid, all the way up to the top, where the high priest or priestess would go up, and they would be, basically holding themselves above on a high pole. And this was back to the worship of some indigenous, I believe, bird gods. For these peoples at the time. Now, again, these are the indigenous Mesoamerican peoples in Jalisco and in Mexico, but very kind of particular and unique to that area are the Guachimontones, and are also kind of special to, the area where Lagrimas is coming from, in El Arenal. El Arenal also believes to have been site to several Guachimontones. So, Lagrimas del Valle means tears of the valley, and that's actually specifically calling out some of those kind of like sad, happy mariachi songs that many people are familiar with. Like La Llorona is probably a great example, while not being mariachi particularly, but there's a number of great classic like mariachi songs that have this kind of like sad love story involved with them. But I also interpreted it as to be somewhat about the tears of the valley being the agave soaking up all the sunlight, and then effectively distilling back down into small teardrops being the distillate coming off the still, which is what you have here. Now, back to the bottle basics and what else you'll find. Of course, it is labeled as tequila. You'll notice we use the word plata. Okay, so plata is different only in name, right? So plata, blanco, silver, all of those things actually mean unaged. And here there is absolutely no age on this tequila. It's only rested in stainless steel tanks. And that just allows for a little bit of minimal oxidation to occur, which allows the flavors to kind of come together and round out a bit more. As we keep going around the label, HO in Mexico, of course, this is made in Mexico. You also have the proof point at 46% ABV, or 92 proof. That was determined through multiple blind tasting panels, and it's actually proof using deep well water. We tasted differences between deep well water and rainwater and reverse RO filtered water, and we found that we liked the deep well water the best. So, Rancho location, Tulchitlan, elevation 1,261 meters above sea level. That gives you the elevation point. So it's at least a point of comparison as you're tasting these different fields. So if we go higher or lower in elevation, how does that alter the flavor? We then go to average agave Brix. Now, this is what is so unique about this particular field. Agave Brix are essentially the sugars that are measured in the plant, and in this case, in the field, when they are harvested. And that's going to give the jimadores, as well as ultimately the distillers, a point of knowledge as far as a data point to consider what is the quality level of the agave. The higher sugar content generally means higher acidity, generally means higher complexity of flavor. Now, I don't specifically know how that might affect the yields as far as the volume of fermentable sugars, etc. But what I have discerned from conversations with other tequileros and distillers, as well as those that are knowledgeable in the industry, is that higher sugar content, those higher Brix, translate to much deeper complexities of flavor. So, generally, what I've seen in quality tequilas is anywhere from about 23 to about 28% Brix or sugar content. And some of the other highest end tequilas that I've encountered have sat between 30 to 35, maybe 34% Brix. The first field that we harvested, Palo Verde, was at 35% Brix. The next field, El Chiqueño, which again was very nearby, was at 32% Brix. Now this, the third field, El Sabino, sits at 40% Brix. This is officially the highest sugar content blue agave tequila I have ever consumed, and I can tell you it absolutely translates to flavor and character in this final distillate. Now, we do also go on to state a little bit of tasting notes as well as details about the specific microclimate of this ranch, the Rancho El Sabino. So, located near Tulchitlan, home of the Guachimontones, iconic circular pyramids featured in the logo, all the things I basically stated. And then exceedingly high quality agave. El Sabino Plata showcases aromas of fresh mint, lemon tea, eucalyptus, and citrus. And on the palate, minerality, cooked agave, oregano, and fresh herbs with a buttery mouthfeel. Now, those tasting notes were written basically just before bottling, or actually about a month or so before, because then we had to print the labels and everything else. Now, what occurs during that time, and what tequila in particular is uniquely sensitive to, is oxygen and is aeration. Now, this is so much so that I've actually had 2 bottles of other brands next to me side by side from the same bottling run, maybe only 1 or 2 bottles off in production. And one bottle I will have opened up in the morning and will have been pouring throughout the day. The next bottle I will open, and side by side in a blind, they taste like completely different tequilas. Now, that freshly opened bottle does oxidize and temper down very quickly, and so, it's really only that initial first pour, and after a couple minutes in the glass, it subsides. But it is very interesting because I have found other tequilas where they have sat open far longer with a significant oxygen or headspace in the bottle, and they do interact with that oxygen pretty quickly. Overall, I notice a little bit more mellowing of some of the higher, brighter, and more ethanol, alcohol-forward notes. I notice a little bit of loss of some of the more delicate kind of floral notes, so you lose some of the grassy elements, but you have more minerality and you have more softness develop, and that's absolutely what I'm seeing here versus what I initially wrote for the tasting notes. Now, this particular bottling is easily, and I'm not joking, this is easily one of my absolute favorite tequilas I've ever tasted. We also have a reposado, which I'll cover in a future Bottle Basics video. It's rested for just 3 months, and I can unequivocally say it is the very best reposado tequila I've ever had. This particular ranch, the El Sabino, is just launching around the United States. Some of the very first bottles are beginning to hit shelves in Kansas City, in the Kansas and Missouri area, and largely because the folks here, our distributors here, have been very on top of making sure and asking, basically, for when the next ranch is going to land. So it is just starting to hit shelves. It's going to be shipping all throughout the United States, but it is a limited run. Like every bottling of Lagrimas del Valle, it is a limited run. It's limited to only as many bottles as that field produced. Now, fortunately, this was a somewhat larger field than others, so hopefully folks that have been trying to find it in states out there, like Texas, I believe you will actually be seeing some Lagrimas on this release of the El Sabino, and frankly, it's a banger of a release. So I'm super stoked that we've got the El Sabino hitting market. and stay tuned for more bottle basics. Cheers.